Good morning, Phantom shipmates. I got underway from Dunleary this morning at about 5 o'clock in order to catch the tide. Looking for a bit of adventure, and whatever comes my way. Next stop, La Rochelle, France, which is about 525 miles from here. I may stop at Lorient in France, 100 miles short of that, to visit some friends. We'll see. I had a great time in Dunleary and Dublin. Highly recommend it. Met some very nice people. They weren't putting up at all with the silliness about French wines, so they gave me a bottle of the real stuff, Jameson Irish whiskey. Very kind of them. Thank you very much. And another good friend in Dunleary gave me a burgee for the RNLI. The RNLI is the local volunteer rescue service here, and very worthy of donations. We have a similar organization in France called SNSM that I donate money to. I haven't ever used their services, but they are called upon thousands of times a year. So a few years ago we had a horrible accident in Les Sables where these brave volunteers went out in a horrible storm to try to rescue a fisherman who was in distress, and their boat overturned in the surf as they were leaving the port, and tragically several of those brave gents were lost in that rescue attempt. So very worthy of donation to your local organizations. These brave ladies and gents deserve the very best equipment that is available, so highly recommend donating to them, and thanks to my good friend for the RNLI pennant there. Thank you. Well, let's keep going. In the cockpit, I'm doing almost 6 knots speed through water, but here I'm doing about 3 knots speed over ground. And that is explained by this. Here's where I am, right about here. I'm looking at 2.5 knots of foul tide running against me. And that's going to get worse in the next hour before it starts getting better. So that's part of, if you want to do long passages on coastal routes, you just have to study the chart so that you're not surprised. Try to maximize, if you're going through an area that's going to take 3 tides, try to time your departure so that you get 2 favorable tides and only 1 negative tide. So anyway, something you have to just live with and accept. That's nature. Okay, the wind has increased to about 16 knots, which is fine. There's no problem with that. It's supposed to increase to between 20 and 25 knots a little later. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a reef now. As I said in one of the other videos, when I put in a reef, I go straight to the second reef. The first reef doesn't do very much. Now what's a little different on this, because of the square top sail, I think, is I come up into the wind and then flag the mainsail, in other words release the sheet, and I actually have to pull down the sail because it won't come down by itself. So I pull it down with the reef line, so you'll see. Has been released. Now I'll try to drop the main. See, it doesn't come down by itself. I have to pull it down. Now the reef is in the right place. Now I just need to crank down the reef and then I'll rehoist the sail. It's tight. The reef is getting tight now. I'll rehoist the mainsail. That's good and tight. Now sheet in the main again. Okay, that was pretty good. Now I'll fall off back to my heading again. Now let me explain what you saw there when I put the reef up, put the reef in. When I tried to drop the mainsail, there's so much wind pressure up high, because there's so much more canvas, I think, up high, that the sail doesn't come down. So then I have to pull it down by pulling down the reef line. But the that time I couldn't even pull it down with just my hand, so I actually had to put the reef line on the winch. And then I started to winch it down. As soon as I started winching it down, the sail started coming down. I know some of you are going to say, oh, put some McLube or what that stuff on the sliders. I've done that. That doesn't change anything. I think what I'm eventually going to do is buy one of those rail things that you attach to your mast. And those are super glissant, sliding. The sliders just go up and down. And I think Eric Andera put one on his boat, and you can see how easy his sail goes up and down. So that's probably what I'll do eventually, but for right now I have to do it a bit more manually than I'd like to do, but it's not a big deal. It's just so second reef in. I'm set even for tonight. So this is a product, McLube, that you can put on sliders and things like that to make them slide up and down much easier. Trust me, I've used it and it doesn't help in my case. That point of land there is Land's End, the southwest corner of England. And all day today, or a good part of the day, I've been beating up a narrow channel parallel to the coast here, at 30 degrees apparent, 16 to 20 knots of wind. It's just a really tough, slow, but that's part of sailing as well. The bad news is that to go to France, I want to go in that direction, which is directly where the wind is coming from. And I'm sure as soon as I turn the corner there and get out into the channel, I'm somewhat protected now by the land over here. As soon as I get out in the channel, it will be even worse. And I'll have no choice but to fall off and go around very wide of the TSS at Ouessant in France. But that's still a day and a half away, so got a long ways to go still. Now this is interesting. This is me paralleling the outside edge of the TSS. But look at these two guys here. They're in there fishing. And I guess I didn't realize that you're allowed to fish inside the neutral area of a TSS. That's interesting. Well, when I left Dunleary in Ireland, I had intended to go all the way to La Rochelle, my hometown in France. I have just now crossed the English Channel. I'm more or less abeam Brest. And the most recent weather report says that in just a few hours, and for the next 36 hours, there's going to be zero wind. So I've decided to make an interim mid-course correction and stop at Camaret Sur Mer, which is very close to Brest. And I'll sit out there for the next 36 hours. And you know, the lovely thing about cruising is that planning usually serves little use. Well, it's going to be sundown in a couple of hours, and this unplanned divert into Camaret Sur Mer means I'm going to arrive very late at night. Especially I'm bucking a foul tide for the next 3 or 4 hours, so I'm not expecting to get there before 2 o'clock in the morning. I know there's a lot of YouTubers that when they say, ooh, arrival at night, we're going to slow down, we won't do that, and that's fine. I totally accept that you should stay within your comfort zone. My experience goes back to aviation, where obviously we did a massive amount of flying at night. But one of the things that any experienced pilot will tell you is that airplanes make funny noises at night. What was that? Did you hear that? Number 2, tuck it in tight and give me an inspection. I'm hearing strange noises. And to a certain extent, boats do that as well. There's something that's not stored properly that you don't notice it during the day, but at night you hear it. Now, the golden rule is that if your airplane or your boat makes night noises during the day, then you should sell it. There's no other cure for it. But seriously, on sailing at night, you know, it's not tacking and jibing at night. It's not navigating a difficult channel with all kinds of buoys and hazards. That doesn't bother me at all. You know what bothers me at night? Are fishing buoys. Because you know, the fishermen, quite often local fishermen, will go out at night and they'll at sunset, and they'll put their fishing pots out and let them soak overnight and then pick them up in the morning. And some of them don't put a whole lot of thought into where they put them, including right smack dab in the middle of an entrance channel to a marina. So that's what worries me more than anything. And knock on wood, I've been really just incredibly lucky that I've had uncounted number of close calls where I see the buoy pass right next to the boat. But fortunately, I've never picked one up yet. Well, hello, fellow shipmates. I just got underway from Camaret Sur Mer, where I spent an unexpected 3 or 4 days because there was just no wind. Now the wind has filled back in, so I'm on my way to La Rochelle, and it's great to be underway again, back out to the place where the streets have no names. Let's go. Well, here's something I haven't done on this boat before. I've hooked up sheet to tiller steering. So the sheet comes through here, through a block, around to the far side, through another block, and is tied off on the helm, on the tiller here. And then balancing that, I have some bungee cords and some rubber cords and that are adjustable, that I can. And now today, I have to say it's fairly calm, and what am I looking at? I'm on almost a beam reach, only 8 knots of wind. So I'll try this again when the winds are a little more robust. But you know, I'd love to do this all night long, so I don't have to get up in the middle of the night to start the engine to recharge the battery. During the daytime, I can leave my autopilot on all day long because I got the solar panels out and it recharges. But at night, I have to get up at about 2 o'clock in the morning and come out and start the engine, run it for an hour, and then shut it down. I'm not sure that I explained that sheet tiller very well for you that are just starting sailing now. What happens is you bring the sheet across to the other side and tie it off on the tiller. And when a gust of wind, a little puff of wind, hits the Genoa, it pulls on it, making you want to turn up into the wind. and then the bungees and the tubing that you put on the other side pull the tiller back and keeps it somewhat stabilized. Now, I have to be honest, on a day like this, flat calm seas and very gentle breeze, it's not a meaningful test. A good test is when there's 12-15 knots of wind and 1 meter, 1.5 meter seas. If it'll hold it relatively steady in those conditions, then you've got a good sheeted tiller system. Okay, I'm entering a tidal race called the Radisson. In English, that translates as Race of the Brest, as in woman's breast. I don't know the history of that name, but what is a tidal race? It's where a massive volume of water is constricted by something either natural or man-made that forces the tide to go through a narrow space at very high rate. So this area here, you can see there's a peninsula over there on the horizon. That direction, the constriction is the peninsula, and in that direction is a very shallow reef that extends out to sea for 15 miles. So all of the tide must go through this area here, and then it turns around and comes back north for when the tide changes. And that runs at about 6 knots here. Now, it's not, today is a very docile day, just a gentle breeze and very small seas, but you know, it can be pretty, it can get ugly if you do this wrong. So you have to do a calculation. So I left Camaret Sur Mer, which is about 16 nautical miles from here, and I wanted to arrive right at high tide. So 16 nautical miles running against, remember, coming against the tide, a gentle tide coming against the tide, all the same, and then it turns right as I get here to run south, and it'll build up to about 6 knots of tide. So it's not a big deal, and it's not that hard, but you need to do your homework, and because there aren't very many sailboats that can sail against a 6-knot tide. You have to be careful. So this is the Radisson. The one that's on north of Brest is called the Chenal du Four, which is much more difficult because it's much longer. This is only a race that only lasts about 2.5 miles. So you have a very large window of opportunity to get through it on a favorable tide. The one that goes the other direction, that's north of Brest, called Chenal du Four, is much longer, you know, from memory 10 or maybe 12 miles long. So you have a very narrow window that you have to hit in order to go through there. And I think the tide is even greater at that one. So if you come along the coast of France, do your homework first so you don't get caught out. One question that comes up from time to time is, what is the range of AIS, Class B AIS, which is what sailboats have? That's ring there is 25 miles, so he's probably 27 miles away, and I can see him. Generally, I see all the targets within 20 miles. They pop up at 20 miles. And I set an alarm that if the target is going to pass within 2 miles of me, that the alarm is going to sound. And then I can monitor it. So that's how it works. I know you're going to laugh at me, but I got the Gennaker out. We're doing very nice, 8.5 knots on the Gennaker. And the true wind speed, you can see it's very nice. The true wind speed is 15 knots, 15 to 16 knots. But the apparent wind speed is 9 knots because of my speed. So 9 knots is the speed that the sail is seeing, which is very reasonable, very manageable. And the forecast is for it to be like this all night long, except with isolated rain showers, is what the forecast says. And isolated occasional rain showers. And you can see there's a little bit of instability in the atmosphere out there, but not much. I'm gonna furl the Gennaker right before sundown. I can't bring myself to leave it. I just need more experience with it, I guess. And was charging my batteries and going along nicely for 45 minutes or so, and I had the propeller engaged, and I picked up, suddenly there was a big vibration, and I thought I'd picked up a line or a rope or something from that was floating, and I put the camera down in the water, and it's a huge piece of plastic wrapped around the propeller. So I dropped the sails. I have a wetsuit and fins with me, so I'm gonna go diving. Wish me luck. Well, I think I'm ready. I've got, I'm trailing a rope here, but you know, I grew up on the ocean, so I can swim very, very well. Well, we'll see. And I've got a knife down here in case I can't get it off. I think it's plastic. It could be some kind of polyester rope as well, but we'll see when I get down there. It was gone when I got there. I think, but I tried to, with the sail, I tried to turn up into the wind and then fall off backwards so that maybe it would dislodge that way, and apparently it did. But when I filmed it with the camera, it was still on them. Any good sailor would. I put the sails back up. I rehoisted the sails before switching out of my head gear. Anyway. Now I'm going to actually take a shower on board this luxury yacht. And I dropped the sails, put on the wetsuit, and jumped in. No big deal. So, if you feel on your boat a really strong engine vibration, the first thing to suspect is something in the something has fouled the prop. Well, it is 9 o'clock at night, and my ETA into La Rochelle is somewhere between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. I've never succeeded in filming anything with a little GoPro at night, so I'll wrap this little expedition up here. Now I've jotted down a couple notes, how to begin. Tous les mots qui viennent sont dérisoires. Well, I think I approve definitively that the three-body problem can be solved. I had great fun. I hope you enjoyed it too. Going up to Rockall, Sula Sgeir, and then over to Ireland. That was just great fun. And I did just under 2,300 nautical miles for this passage, La Rochelle to La Rochelle, and 4 port calls along the way. But it sure seemed like the majority of it was sailing upwind. I felt like I was running up that hill forever. Anyway, now the last day and a half, there's downwind sailing, so that's nice. I didn't have any major material breakages, although I think I might have to replace the feu de une, as we say in French, which is the steaming light in English, which the halyard wrap around, and I'm probably going to replace my sheets that I discussed in the last episode. They got damaged by a shackle pin, but other than that, really nothing. The boat I'm very happy with. The boat performed well, much better than its owner, so no problems there. So thanks very much for following along. I hope you had a chuckle or two, and I always learn something. I learned something about the boat, I learned something about sailing, and I learned something about myself on these adventures. So you know, if anything, I hope that inspires you to try to get out on your own, out onto the sea. And if you can't do it solo, do it with someone else, you know, because it is great fun and you learn a lot of stuff. I've already got some ideas in mind for another adventure in a month or two. I haven't quite wrapped up the details of that yet, so stay tuned. As we say in French, voyage éternellement.